Thank you very much, first of all. Thank you very much, Farrokh. First of all, for having accepted the invitation.
Yeah, my pleasure.
For this brief interview. We are here, okay, just a brief presentation. Farrokh Nadim from NGI, Oslo in Norway, well known worldwide for his activity on landslide risk assessment and mitigation, landslide work, research work on landslide hazard, not only research work, because you are at Norwegian Geotechnical Institute, so you do a lot of practical work. We are here at the University of Salerno because you are teaching at LARAM school around 2018. You are you've been teaching at all the LARAM schools, I guess.
I think I've been in all the LARAM schools, at least all the LARAM schools in Italy.
Exactly.
I think I missed one of them in China. But,
so since 2006, you are a constant presence at LARAM school. You didn't teach yet this year. You're going to do your lecture tomorrow. What are you going to say to the students tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow my lecture is about a completely new topic. It's about nature-based solutions for landslide risk mitigation. And as opposed to previous years, I really don't have much new thing to teach to the students, but it's mostly telling them the concepts of where the research is going. And hopefully I can get some ideas from the students tomorrow.
So it's going to be an interactive class.
It's going to be a very interactive class, and we'll see how it goes. It's the first time this topic is being taught at the LARAM school. Well, it's not really being teaching, but it's just discussions mostly tomorrow.
And that's because you are engaged in a project that is has started, and so some of the activities will...
It's a large EU project that started in June this year. And it's not a research project, it's an innovation and implementation project. And the idea is to use nature-based solutions for mitigation of landslide and floods in mountainous regions. And of course, when you talk about nature-based solutions, maybe it's taking a step back from technical innovations. It's trying to think about the basics, how does nature function, and what can we do to adopt our living methods all living styles to what nature requires of us.
Is it, of course, it is an international, of course, but it's also an interdisciplinary project because the topic is very interesting.
Very much interdisciplinary.
How many disciplines, what are the kind of people that are involved in this project?
It's all types of this, social scientists, political scientists, landscape architects, what have you. So it's and when we talk about innovation in this context, it's like I said, it's not really technical innovation, but it's innovation in how we make decisions, innovation of how we engage the population in the choosing of different solutions. So it's and innovations on what we can learn. So it's very different concepts of innovation.
It will be a perfect way to close the school tomorrow because, differently from the previous years, as you mentioned, you always taught at the school, most often at the beginning, to give the students a framework upon which the other lectures have been then discussing different topics. This year you are scheduled at the very end of the school within the risk management part.
And I think that this is also to give some of the students get very motivated with this sort of thing, especially the young people and for us engineers who work many years with engineering solutions, it's very difficult to change our mindset. But once you start looking into these things, you start to questioning, some of the solutions we've been using all the time. Is this really the right solution in the long term, or are we just addressing the short-term problems? So it's a useful way of thinking, and hopefully, and that's the way things are going now. So that's.
And of course, research is needed. You are saying it's an innovation and implementation.
There's a lot of research is needed, and especially with the situation that this sort of concepts, nature-based solutions, they don't solve your problem immediately. If you implement something now, maybe you see the results in 20 years, 30 years. So you have to make sure that at least you have to be able to model how these things are going to work. You have to understand them, and there's a lot of research needed, even though you say nature has been operating for 4 billion years.
Yeah, we have to mimic nature, we have to understand what it does, we have to do a lot of things about it. I'm looking forward to hear your presentation as well. I will be there listening to you tomorrow. Moving from what you teach at the LARAM school, to something more general and research about landslide risk assessment, mitigation, management. The latest project you mentioned is a project you just started in international cooperation, but you've been running a lot of projects. You've been serving as director of the International Center for Geohazards for 10 years. In your experience, where were we, say, 15 years ago, maybe when the International Center for Geohazards started, and where are we now?
Well, I think the main shift in thinking is going towards more risk-based thinking. That it's not just our jobs as engineers or geologists or natural scientists is not just to stop the processes, especially when we talk about landslides. Landslides is a natural geological process. And sometimes it's better to let the landslide happen and for example, prevent people of building their facilities, infrastructure in dangerous areas. So, and then risk has two aspects. One part is the hazard, the other part is the consequence. And when it comes to the consequences, it's really the human actions, human behavior that governs the consequences. So in a risk-based thinking, there's a lot of things we can do to reduce the risk without intervening in the natural geological processes. So I think that's the main shift that we see, and especially risk is a forward-looking concept. You're thinking about what might happen in the future. So we have to think about prevention rather than coming after some disaster happens and try to repair things.
Of course, like at the LARAM school, the school is Landslide Risk Assessment and Mitigation. The name of the school is that that concept is clear. But do you think that it's also there in the community, in the wider community? You saw this shift. That's what you're saying, telling me.
And I think especially in Europe, LARAM school has been very essential in propagating this way of thinking. Now, you mentioned the LARAM school started already in, was it 2006?
2006 was the first time, and every time.
And now the graduates of the first LARAM schools are now they're in the industry, they're in the decision-making systems, and what they've been taught through this LARAM school is now beginning to see the effects of that, this long-term effects. So I'm really happy that I've been involved with this LARAM school right from the start, and everywhere I go now I run into LARAM school graduates.
Oh, that's something that happens to me all the time as well, because there's been many students.
And not just in Europe, and all over the world. I mean, you run into this LARAM.
You will see the class tomorrow also this year is very interdisciplinary and international.
Very international, yes.
As usual. Thinking about resources that are out there available for, say, PhD students, but not only, practitioners and people that are interested in these topics. Can you mention some based on your experience, or maybe something that is from NGI, because you've been running many projects?
Well, I think still we're in the situation where resources become available after something bad happens. So if you're working with prevention and mitigation, it's still very difficult. But
that change of culture, you're saying,
that change of culture is taking more time. But what we're seeing now affects that. Like for example, the road authorities in Norway or the railway authorities, they're starting to think, what is the risk, long-term risk of our portfolios? Are we building the roads in the right places, or are we doing enough to reduce the risk, and so on. So in practical projects, I think resources are becoming more and more available, but a lot of it has to do also with public education. So people have to realize that there is some risk from these natural phenomena like landslides or floods and so on. And the way of their living, where they decide to build their houses, where they decide to build their roads, affects the risk in the long term. And I think slowly that shift is coming.
And maybe one last question to end this brief conversation. You are working not only in Europe, but throughout the world, because also your organization allows you to do that. You are engaged in a lot of projects throughout the world. Do you see important differences in the way, because you mentioned people are very important, so the culture is important, the institutions, and the way people lives of people are managed is important. Can you see, or can you tell us some important differences between different cultures, different areas of the world?
Oh, absolutely. I mean that's and it also has to do with well, it has two aspects. One thing is the level of education in the different places, and then the other thing is how exposed they are to these natural hazards. For example, when it comes to the landslide risk management, probably the place in the world which is in front of everybody else is Hong Kong. And that's because, Hong Kong is a very small area, large concentration of people, and there's no way you can get away from the landslide hazard. And plus, they have very highly educated people in Hong Kong. And they've implemented this kind of people-based hazard mitigation. So everybody, if somebody's walking along a slope and notices something strange happening, they know exactly what to do, where to call, and call the experts and just try to solve the problems. So yeah, by working internationally, there's a lot of things that we can learn from many areas, and that shouldn't be forgotten.
Yeah, we should move maybe the best practices that are somewhere to other places where these practices are not present yet. Yeah. Well, I thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Michele. My pleasure.
Thank you.